The rain hadn't stopped all day. It poured from the sky in endless sheets, blurring the streets and soaking the sidewalks of the quiet town of Rosewood. People rushed along with umbrellas tilted against the wind, eager to get indoors, eager to stay dry, eager to move past anything that didn't concern them. No one noticed the small figure crouched near the back of the grocery store, hidden beside the trash bins. She was hunched down, trying to stay out of sight, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, her bare feet pressed against the cold concrete. She had no coat, no bag, nothing but soaked clothes and hollow eyes. Most people didn't even glance her way. Most never do, except Margaret. Margaret walked the same route every Thursday. Groceries at 5, tea by 6. That evening, she was moving a little slower than usual, her hands full of paper bags, her umbrella wobbling in the gusting wind. She nearly passed the alley without a second look. But something, a feeling, a flicker made her pause. She turned, blinked through the rain, and saw her. A little girl, probably 10 years old, trembling and soaked to the bone. Margaret stood there for a moment, caught between instinct and uncertainty. She wasn't the sort to intervene in other people's lives. She lived alone in a small, aging white house with cracked steps and wind chimes that sang mournful tunes. She had no children, no husband, and not many friends either. Quiet, polite, invisible, that's how people described her. But in that moment she didn't think, she just moved. She approached slowly, careful not to startle the child. The girl flinched as Margaret knelt beside her and reached into her bag. She offered a sandwich, peanut butter and banana, wrapped in wax paper. The girl didn't say a word, just took it with both hands and ate like she hadn't in days. Margaret reached into her coat and pulled out an old scarf. She draped it gently over the girl's shoulders, then asked softly, "Do you want to come with me?" The girl hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Margaret reached out her hand. The girl stared at it for a long time before finally placing her cold, damp fingers into Margaret's. They walked through the storm as people stared from behind foggy windows. Some whispered, some scoffed. One woman at the bus stop even chuckled and nudged her friend. "Can't believe she's bringing that kid home. She couldn't even keep a cactus alive last year." Margaret heard them. She didn't care. Back at home, she gave the girl towels, warm socks, and one of her oversized sweaters. She made tomato soup and grilled cheese. Still, the girl said nothing, but she ate. She looked around the room cautiously, like a cat learning the edges of a new space. Margaret didn't pry. She only said, "You can sleep in the guest room. I'll be just down the hall." That night, the house felt different, warmer, not because of the heater, but because something had shifted. A presence, a breath, a reason. The next morning, Margaret made pancakes. She set the table and placed the plate in front of the girl, who sat with her hair still damp, fingers wrapped around a mug of warm milk. After a few bites, Margaret finally said, "I'm Margaret. What's your name?" There was a pause. Then the girl spoke for the first time. "Lily." Lily stayed. Margaret didn't ask how long. She didn't need to know everything to know enough. She called a friend at city services and arranged things quietly. Foster options were discussed, papers filed, but Lily stayed with Margaret through it all. Not everyone in Rosewood understood. People talked. At the market, at church, at the library, some admired her, others questioned her. No background checks, no training, no family ties. But Margaret didn't listen. She was too busy reading bedtime stories to Lily, too busy learning her favorite foods, too busy trying to understand the fear behind the girl's eyes. For weeks, Lily barely spoke. She jumped at sudden noises. She didn't like being left alone, but slowly she began to draw, with crayons on napkins, with pencils on old receipts, with watercolors on pages torn from the newspaper. Her drawings were full of color, sunsets and stars and places that didn't exist except in her mind. Margaret watched her with quiet awe. One day, Lily drew a picture of a house, not Margaret's house exactly, but one with big windows and light pouring out. In front of it were two stick figures holding hands. She handed it to Margaret without a word. At the top, written in crooked letters, was one word: home. It was the first time Margaret cried in front of her. Months passed. Lily began school. Margaret walked her there every morning, lunchbox in hand, a hug before the bell. It wasn't easy. The other kids didn't understand her silence. The teachers were unsure how to reach her. But then came art class. One week, the assignment was to paint something that made you feel safe. While other kids painted rainbows or their pets, Lily painted a girl under a starry sky, held in the arms of a tall woman with silver hair and kind eyes. The teacher was so moved, she submitted it to a statewide art contest. Lily won. From there, things changed. Her story was shared in the local newspaper. People in town began seeing her not as the quiet girl from nowhere, but as the gifted artist with a past. And with that, they began to see Margaret differently, too. At the town fair, Lily's artwork was displayed for the first time. A woman who once mocked Margaret approached her and said, "You saw something in her that none of us did." Margaret simply replied, "I saw someone who needed to be loved." By the time Lily was 15, her artwork had been featured in 3 galleries. By 16, she was being courted by college programs. She still didn't say much, but her eyes were brighter, her smile more frequent. And every night, she still asked Margaret to say good night. Then came the town mural project. The city council selected Lily to paint a new piece on the wall of the public library. It was the biggest project she had ever done. She worked on it every day for 2 months, sometimes into the evening, Margaret often bringing her tea and sandwiches. On unveiling day, the town gathered in the square. Reporters arrived. A podium was set up. Lily stood beside her mural, her hands still stained with blue and gold paint. She looked nervous, but when she stepped to the microphone, her voice didn't waver. "When I was little, I lived on the street," she said. "People didn't see me. I was just part of the background, but one day someone did." She reached out her hand. She didn't ask where I came from or why I was alone. She just said I could stay. People laughed at her. They thought she was foolish, but she never laughed back. She just believed in me, and because of that, I'm here. The mural behind her was called The Garden of Second Chances. It showed dozens of children, all different, gathered around a woman sitting on a bench, reading a book. Around them bloomed trees and light. A small plaque below read, "For Margaret, who gave me my first brush and my first hope." The crowd stood silent for a moment. Then came the applause, loud, long, full of something no one could quite put into words. After that, Lily's life accelerated. She won more awards, started teaching art to foster children. Then, just before her 20th birthday, she opened her own studio, a place where any child could come paint, eat, and feel safe. Margaret, older now, helped her run it. She sat by the front desk, welcoming visitors, serving hot cocoa, and telling stories. One snowy night, a young girl wandered in, thin, cold eyes full of fear. Lily knelt down and said, "You're safe here. Would you like to draw something?" The girl nodded. Lily handed her a brush. Margaret watched from her corner, a warm blanket on her lap, her eyes filled with peace. She had once said yes to a child the world ignored, and because of that, everything changed. Years later, a journalist writing an article on the foundation asked Lily, "What do you think saved you?" She smiled. A sandwich, a scarf, a quiet woman who didn't turn away, and in that small town, people no longer whispered when they passed Margaret's old house. They spoke her name with reverence, because kindness, once sown, doesn't just grow. It blooms forever.